Hi. Yeah, I was looking at this car here and was wanting to know if you had any information on it. So I see you're interested in this used car here. Great. What brings you in today? Is it just the used car or were you looking for something
I
else?
don't know.
Oh, fantastic. So, let me tell you a little bit about this car.
I
It's
I
got
don't know. I'm
great
just
gas
looking.
mileage.
Let me think about it.
It's
How much
top of
is
the
it?
line. It's driven by a little old lady from Pasadena. And we're looking, thanks, but $5,000 out the door.
10
What do you
years
say?
old. It's pretty old, and
You didn't tell me how many miles there were on it. Or a little old lady from Pasadena doesn't seem like a great deal to me. I don't know. I'm going to have to
well,
think about it. Let me check with my
I'll
manager and I'll
let you
get
know.
back to you. No, 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 don't leave. Don't leave. Please don't leave. I will get you all the information you need for that because I know it's a great car. Yeah, it's a 10-year-old car, but it's a great car. That little skit, that brief message, was me trying to explain a principle that we have in economics that we call the lemon principle. And it really starts with an understanding of what we call asymmetric information. Up to this point, you're probably thinking in class that everything's perfect, life is perfect at your age. Nobody has a care in the world, nobody has a worry in the world, and everybody knows exactly everything they need to know. And with the advent of the internet, that's very true in many respects, but there's a pitfall with the internet that so many people have access to it that you can get misinformation, which is also very common nowadays. Too much misinformation versus true and proper and exact factual information is out there. So our research is limited. Asymmetric information, which goes back beyond the internet and before computers, is the concept that we don't have 100% knowledge on everything. And the lack of our knowledge from one side is a benefit or is outweighed by the amount of knowledge that someone else has. For instance, like I said, this is we talk about it in economics, but it can be applied to many different aspects that manufacturers of a product, people that make something, they know exactly the exacting reasons why they make it, how they make it, why they made it, for whom. All those questions are answered, what the costs were involved in making it, what the machine that was used to make it, when was it made. They have a lot number and a serial number. Those items, like a car manufacturer, they normally have the VIN number, vehicle identification number. The VIN tells us when it was produced, what day it was produced, what parts were being used. All that information is recorded specifically for that particular car versus the same model, make, model, and year from a different point on the line has a different VIN. So it's specifically identified that that car has this information in it. But when it comes to the consumer doesn't know one car from the other. And the consumer will go by the information available to them plus their experience, what they've experienced, their information that they glean from from other sources, like family and friends. When they ask, what do you think about this particular car manufacturer, this particular product, you get a solicited information from them, and their bias is created because of that. And that bias alienates the consumer sometimes from the supplier, who knows exactly what was put into manufacturing that, how it was made, what parts were the quality standards that they attained to get to that point, to that product. Yet the consumer has a bias for or against that product. That difference in information, that whether it's factual or not, creates a taste, consumer taste or preference amongst the consumer. That preference uh, creates the animosity or the competition that producers of that product have to overcome. How do we do that? Well, that's what we're going to talk about a little bit in a moment. So asymmetric information, the word symmetry means equal or balanced. Asymmetry, the negation, is that it's not balanced, that one side knows more about something or one product than the other. When it comes to financial products, the seller of that product or the issuer of that product knows more about the company, if they are the company issuing a bond and borrowing it direct from the public. They know more about their own company than the consumer or the saver who's wishing to purchase that bond. Or stock, if you're buying a stock, the seller of that stock may know more about that stock or that company than the saver or the buyer of that stock. So it calls for more time, and that time incorporates what's called transaction costs, the cost involved in research and for the cost of the transactions itself. And these transaction costs weigh on the price that is actually paid for that financial instrument. And the saver has that to also overcome and weigh in their valuation of that product. Do I want to pay this much plus the transaction, plus my research, in addition to paying for that price of that? I need to make sure that I'm getting a return, and that rate of return is greater than equal to the benefit is greater than or equal to the cost of that, or else there's no reason to be saving. I want to grow that money. There's only appreciation, not depreciation. We want to appreciate, not discount our money. So there's a couple of concepts here. As I mentioned in there, we were talking about the Lemon Principle. The Lemon Principle is simply that, and it's attributed to used cars, but it can be broadened to many different concepts or many different products, in that the seller of a used car knows more about the used car than the consumer is coming to shop. I had the seller on one side and I had the buyer on the other. The buyer was apprehensive without full knowledge, even though the seller said, I'm willing to supply you with as much information as possible to give you an educated understanding of this product. Still, there's time that is a cost as included in the transaction cost. So the Lemon Principle is that there is a probability that a consumer has that is ingrained in the mind of the consumer based on personal experience, consumer taste, and information they are able to glean from outside sources, non-official sources, that they determine that the probability of this car breaking down is at a certain level, maybe high, maybe low. And the price that they're willing to pay for it is sort of in the middle. It's not going to be the lowest, but it's not going to be really that true purchase price or the price that's offered at the time of the sale. So the seller is always at the bad end of it, knowing that this product, despite what everyone else says, is a very good product and it's a very good used car. Nonetheless, the consumer is always apprehensive, so there's always going to be a give and take where the seller is not going to get top dollar for that product. So that's the Lemon Principle, that there is inherently extreme information that either the product is really, really terrible or really, really great, and somewhere in the middle is what the true experience is going to be of that consumer. But you never know as a consumer, never know as a saver, never know as an investor exactly what you're coming out with. And there's no prediction to what, even though past performance is not indicative of future results. You may hear that phrase, past performance is not indicative of future results. That is a mantra of investing, that you can never tell exactly what's going to happen tomorrow, but you know what happened yesterday. And yesterday does not predict tomorrow. Now, broadening from that, we also talk about a couple of different things called, one's called adverse selection and one is called moral hazard. Adverse selection is where the one party has so much information that they withhold in order to determine or uh, for a particular outcome. One party is looking for a particular outcome and they withhold information so that they're not negatively impacted. Adverse selection would be in a case where someone has pre-existing health conditions and an insurance company will charge a higher premium because there's a negative connotation to a pre-existing health condition that's long-term, or it's constantly going to be there. It's never going to be cured. So the insurance company is taking on that risk, additional risk than just the risk of an age and a particular profile of an individual. In addition to that particular profile, then they have that additional risk of the pre-existing condition. Then insurance premiums go up, and they used to do that before the Affordable Care Act went into place. And that Affordable Care Act incorporates that you can't do that with people with pre-existing conditions. In fact, you have to cover them like anyone else. Now, that's adverse selection. Moral hazard is where one party may engage in more risky behavior because risk has been mitigated. And because of this mitigation, they engage in the riskier behavior. For instance, a person may get really good health insurance for a very low premium. And so then they start riding a motorcycle or start skydiving. And they may go to Skydive Tecumseh, which is a little skydive company down in Tecumseh, Michigan. They all of a sudden start jumping out of planes because, hey, I've got great health insurance, and so if I break a leg, it's going to be paid for and nothing is going to come out of my pocket. That's moral hazard in that the individual has engaged in more risky behavior because the risk has been mitigated, in that if that person breaks their leg, I'm not paying for the entire medical costs out of my own pocket. I have health insurance to pay for it, and that health insurance is going to be paying the majority of it. Even if it's 80%, I only have to pay 20% instead of 100%. So I've engaged in more risky behavior. So we apply that to financial instruments or financial markets. The adverse selection would be where a bond or a stock is withholding certain information so that we would not select against it, because with that new information, because it's asymmetric, they have more information that they don't give. With that, not giving that information, then we are engaging in risky behavior while investing or saving with that vehicle without full understanding and full knowledge, full disclosure of information. That's why we have certain things which we'll talk in the next video, in another video about financial institutions that encourage full disclosure of this type of information. Moral hazard is if the risk is mitigated, particularly if it's an intermediary financial institution, there's a risk mitigation or risk sharing, I should call it, not mitigating, but sharing, where risk is shared between the investor saver and this institution. The financial institution, this intermediary. So because the risk is being shared, then the saver may engage in more risky behavior or risky vehicles, maybe invest in a junk bond, which is high return, but also high risk. Because I'm buying it through a mutual fund, or which is a financial intermediary in a way, or I'm buying a bond, or I'm lending through, as a saver, I'm lending through a financial institution. The financial institution may engage in more risky loans to have a larger portfolio of loans. But as a saver, that's part of your money, and if that loan is not paid, then your savings is at risk. Another principle in asymmetric information we also talk about is the principal-agent the concept. A principal in legal terms is a person who hires someone like an agent to do what the principal can do, or work in the name of the principal. We talk about real estate agents. A real estate agent, you hire a real estate agent to sell your house. Now, there's no law, there's no rule, there's nothing that says that you have to use a real estate agent. There are many people that sell their homes on their own for sale by seller. For sale by seller is a common enough concept. You all know you do that with your own cars. Sometimes you sell on your own. You don't go through a dealership to sell your car. That's your agent. You go through a real estate agent. That agent acts on your behalf and works only as you would. And employees are considered agents in a way too, because they're working for the owner or the company. And as they work for the company, the company is the principal, that legal entity and that legal relationship between the principal and the agent. The agent must act in the best interest of the principal. And that's where asymmetric information enters into this concept of the agent principal concept, is that the agent may know more about what's going on than the principal. Your real estate agent knows the housing market better than you do or better than I do. And so they know who to sell, how to sell, and they know how much they really can get for your property despite what you're willing to sell it for. So you may want $200,000, but the real estate agent says 150 is the best you're going to get. But I'm not going to tell him that. I'm going to lower it. So if I sell it for 150 or knock them down to 150, maybe I can convince the principal to accept that because I'm still going to get a commission. That's a bit of moral hazard as well. And that's a adverse selection too. The real estate agent engages in both a little bit of adverse selection, a little moral hazard to encourage more buying and selling of the properties, because of the self-interest of the agent is an overriding part of this relationship. That managers, that employees will work for their own self-interest, usually to the detriment of the principal, without the principal knowing. And that's asymmetric as well. I know more about what's going on. I'm hiding things. I'm doing things to make sure that I get the benefit. Management usually, if their benefits or not benefits, or there's a commission or salaries are based on performance-based pay, they will lower expectations so that they're easily met and exceeded, but they're only doing mediocre. But I've exceeded that goal, but the goal was so low, it's below my knees. That's pretty low. And I'm just working at this level. I can easily skate through and still collect commission, which is a detriment to the business, to the principal, who's continuing to pay that commission, continuing to pay that performance-based pay, despite the fact that there's no real value that's being added. That's part of the problem with the principal-agent relationship, is that the agent engages in self-interest, and that self-interest can be a detriment to the principal. This is all wrapped into the concept of asymmetric information, which is the broader topic. How do we apply the agent principal issue to financial instruments? Well, if you have a stock broker that you work for, or a broker dealer that we work through, you say, I want to buy this stock at a certain price. That broker dealer is going to sell whenever they want to, despite what you say about a price that you want to sell it at, because they need that commission, and they only will get a commission if they do the trade. So financial intermediaries may be a way of, and a broker is a intermediary because you're going through a broker to reach the market. Then stockbroker is the one that actually goes to the market, and that's where we have these dealer systems like Robinhood, you may have heard of at the beginning of this year, but there are other Scottrade, and there's other programs where you can work toward doing almost directly to the markets to buy and sell stock or other securities, other equities, other assets as an investment or a savings But the stockbroker will work in their own, as an agent of yours, they could work in their own benefit, self-interest to execute that trade or that purchase or that investment in your name, but you may not benefit from it because the timing may not be exactly the way you want it, so that the benefit may not be as big as you are looking or expecting. So these are some of the problems that we have to take in consideration when we're analyzing the markets. See you next time.